Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the series where I'm recreating Murray's costume manor from Secret of the Mimic in Minecraft. In the last video, we took a look at the entirety of the research and development floor as well as the final chase sequence areas, but today we're going to be finishing the costume manor by building the full exterior and cover over the factory. I've honestly been looking really forward to finally getting to this part of the build, so let's not waste any more time and take a look at how I'm going to get it done. To get started, I want to bring you along with my thought process of how I want to go about doing this, as while I'm pretty sure the exterior of the MCM should align up with the things I've already built, but I also want to make sure that I'm able to recreate the exterior and the roof as closely as possible, while also fitting over the different rooms. To do this, I'm going to have 3 different saves that I'm going to be using as reference, one of them being at the very start of the game before we enter the costume manor, one being just before the big top chase sequence when we get on top of the roof for the first time, and one at the very end of the game once we're about to exit the mansion. All 3 of those saves give you a good idea of what the exterior looks like with not just the roof, but also the parking lot and surrounding areas, so I'm going to be using all 3 and possibly mixing up different details just in case some of them differ from each other. However, if you've been watching the last few episodes of this series, you'll know that the MCM since completing the main rooms has started to become a bit inconsistent with where different areas are supposed to be compared to where they're shown off to be. So what I'm going to do instead of just cutting right to the outlines being completed is I'm going to start on the outlines now, but I'm going to cut back every so often just to make sure that everything is going the right way. If it does, then everything should be smooth sailing, but in case it's not, well, it should still be fun to watch. Alright, so the first area I'm going to work on is the big top chase sequence. So we come out of the big top showroom and then get to the roof access. This is going to have priority over everything else, as even if the roof changes in layout later on in the game, this should still be more important since we're actually able to get on the roof and walk around the place. Okay, I wasn't expecting to run into an issue like this already. It's not too big of a problem, at least I can't think of right now. This balcony though is supposed to go, at least what it's showing me in game, to about like right here, I would say. It doesn't go to the center of the warehouse. Now, this could just be an issue of, you know, Minecraft scaling compared to the scaling of a video game. But when it's that big of a difference, that's a bit concerning. It doesn't need to be directly covering over block for block. I'm not expecting it to, but I'd at least like it to be closer than it is. And I'm not even like half an hour into outlining. Look how much I've got left to go, and I'm already starting to struggle just getting this here. Like just the overall size of things. What on earth? Now there are a few things to point out already, but nothing too substantial yet. I already mentioned earlier how this is already a little bit closer in than it should be. It should extend to be a bit further out. However, I don't think that that's going to be too much of an issue and isn't the main thing I want to bring up. The first and most obvious thing is this building right here, which is the stairwell that leads down to the staff offices. Now, I've known this since about episode 2 now, I think, and it clips through this building right here, the smaller office in the Showtime hub, and then leads to this down here. It's all part of the same tunnel, but this building is in the way. I knew that would be the case, but no, it is just in the way, and it's another one of those cases where an area gets loaded during a certain time, and then when it needs to be removed for another segment, then it just gets unloaded so that way we can walk through the area. Speaking of, the actual staff offices are what we get chased through during the big top chase sequence. I imagine the door is going to be around here, and there is space, but I'm not convinced, especially since it circles all the way back around. We're gonna have to go into this area, drop down a floor, and then come all the way back. I don't think that's gonna happen. But now I want to get the front part of the building done, at least outlined. That way I can then connect the two together, assuming that every other area has the same loaded in assets, so I am actually able to connect the two together. This has ended up being a lot more involved than I thought it was going to be. You know what? I'm actually impressed. This is the very first save when we just pull up to the MCM and everything seems to look the same. However, I must say, it feels like there's something missing. Yeah, there's definitely something missing. How did they miss that? Okay, well, only one way to find out, I guess. Yep. That's what I thought. Why are you like this? Why are you like this? Why can't you line up? God, why is it so difficult? I just love the way that this series has devolved, by the way. Like, I started off so hopeful, so optimistic, so happy to get started, seeing how everything was interconnected to itself, and the moment I started on the basements... Why? Come on, why? No, for God's sake. I don't even know how to do this. Do I just have an overhang? Like, literally, what do I do here? Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh, why are you like this? Okay, no, I've once again run into another problem, and this goes back to once again what I was saying about this being too far away from the warehouse. This segment right here, which I will actually pull up right now, is this, and as you can see, it is right next to the big top segment. However, that is over here, so basically that should be here. Wait, no, you know what's even worse? Is that this wall right here aligns up with that same wall that I've been on about. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Before anyone says anything, because I can already see this being a comment that I see, no, I will not have the interior and an exterior be two different builds. I'm going to make this work. Somehow. Right, I finally got there in the end. The outlines for the MCM facility are finally done, as well as the parking lot itself. I thought I might as well get this out of the way with, as it's not really as interesting to see me mark down individual props as it is getting the outlines of an entire building itself. It's amazing how, honestly, this front part, all of this area here, was so much more of a pain than all of these areas back here. It still has the exact same shape as what's seen in Secret of the Mimic, and there are a few times where the details aren't really there because we're never going to be able to see the backside of this facility, but you can still see where different details would be able to be shown off, like the window that leads into Edwin's office. There's some windows right here in the warehouse which, you know, don't lead to the outside, but then again, I'm just following what's seen in game. The amount of blank spaces here, like, we could add so much more rooms here. There's even a doorway right there, implying that there is supposed to be more that we don't see. But as for the actual layout of the MCM roof, this is everything now put together. All of the different decorations on the top of it, all of the general shape and outlines that cover over each room, everything is now done and I can actually get started on the building. Before I do though, I quickly want to take one more look at the big top chase sequence, as while I'm pretty sure that this isn't going to be able to fit here, I at least want to give it a go. Never mind, not even 2 minutes later and I'm already realizing this isn't going to happen. This is the entry doorway right here. The next doorway is 3 floors down, so there's this middle catwalk in between the two, then there's another one beneath it. That's not happening. That's just simply not happening. Alright, I'll make a workaround. I'm cutting this time lapse short quickly just because I think I've messed up here. At least I hope that I've messed something up. The exit doorway is right here, which is a problem because the stairwell is over here. So I'm really hoping that I just made the vent sequence the wrong way around, and that there's not two different types of stairwells. There's no way they'd do that, right? Unfortunately, this time, it's not the game's fault, it was my fault. I had the crawl space sequence rotated 180 degrees in the wrong direction, so now that it's facing the right way, everything connects back to the staircase, and everything now connects to each other just like it should do. Now what I've also gone ahead and done is not just finish the big top outlines, but I've also added the Jackie Chase sequence outlines. Just like the Tiger Tunnels and any other basement, it's actually a completely separate area to MCM, despite the ending of it leading back to the security office. It would have been cool. I mean, there is some space up there at the security office, and we can see the vent that we would take. However, unfortunately, once again, this just makes no sense, and it has to be where it is right now. With all of that out of the way now, we have finally finished the outline arc of this episode. This has gone on for a lot longer than I thought it would, but once again, it's nice that I've been able to pace myself, not rush any of it. That way I can do things at my own time, make sure it's the way I want it to, and the build is going to end up looking good. So with the hard part now out of the way with, I can now finally go ahead and get started working on the build itself. I can't imagine this is going to be complicated, but honestly at this point, I'm expecting anything. But let's just go ahead and get right into it. Spoiler alert, it went great. There was no problems with it. I didn't need to change anything. Well, I did need to change things actually. There were a few times where the outlines might be a little off and I need to change things as I go along, but that's the point of outlines. I can just move them. They're not a permanent thing. They're just to get me the idea of how things are going to look like. But with that being said, there was something about the exterior that was so much fun to build. This has easily become my favorite part of the build by far, and I'm gonna go on later about... I'm basically just gonna keep going on about it later. I'm recording this after I finished everything, and trust me, I go on about this. There's something about the exterior that I really, really like, and I think it's helped by the fact that this is the first official look at the exterior to a FNAF location. I've obviously built small facades to the previous FNAF games, 1 through 6, the Pizzaplex, things like that, but those have all been my imagination. None of them are official. This is the first time in a FNAF game where we've actually seen the outside to the play area, and not only did we get the outside to it, but we got an entire landscape of things to look at. I genuinely don't think I could have done a better job with it if I tried myself. Like, I always try to make an exterior to my builds just so that way it's not bland and boring. Obviously, there's some exceptions with the Pizzaplex because it's just so goddamn big, but I think this is perfect. Like, there are so many mixed details and decorations that I would have never thought of. Like, the side parking lot here, the parking lot itself, it has much more going on than any of my Pizzaplexes. The side part with all of the garden decorations, I genuinely think this is perfect. And I'm not even talking about my build right now, I'm just talking about the actual MCM exterior. This is something that I've looked at from day one since I played Secret of the Mimic for the first time. I knew that I would have to build this, and I'm so glad I'm finally here and was able to do it. It genuinely felt so satisfying. I think that's another thing as well of why this ended up being my favorite. It feels like a reward because I have built all of the interior, you know, everything else is done minus the chase sequences, but now I'm actually putting a shell over it and completing it. It is going to be weird not seeing the mess of outlines anymore and all of the rooms just out in the open, but honestly, like, I'm not even upset about it because what actually goes over it is really, really interesting. Now, there are some parts here that aren't as interesting as others, like the backside of the MCM. Since we never see this, it's just going to be a repetition of some used textures, so that way, you know, it can fill up a wall, the player's never going to see it, so there doesn't need to be as much detail going on, so there's no need to render in some unseen details like that. But either way, I still think that I managed to capture it really well, and it still looks satisfying. Even with all of the changes I had to make to the factory roof itself, it isn't one-to-one. I think I made that quite obvious while making all of the outlines. But even then, like, I'm not upset about it. Sure, I make this series to try and recreate the game to my best of my ability, but sometimes, like, you're just not going to make it work. You know, not everything is perfect, and maybe some people will be annoyed at me because I'm not doing it one for one specifically, but like I keep mentioning, like, it's my build at the end of the day. I do what I want, and I'm happy with it, so I really don't care what anyone else thinks at the end of the day. And, like, man, I genuinely just can't stop looking at this. Like, even just in between the times where I've been editing and recording this footage, I've just been constantly flying over the building and looking at everything going on. Like, these giant smokestacks are just such a prime example of a factory, and this is my first time building a factory. I just thought about that, actually. I've never built a factory in Minecraft, and actually having this exterior really finalizes it. Even if MCM isn't so much a factory as it is just like a giant amusement park for whatever you call them, investors. Like, actually having an industrial look to everything while still having so many colorful and interesting decorations and shapes to everything, it really makes it so much more fun, more satisfying, and again, makes me want to build some of my own in the future. With that being said though, once again, I am incredibly proud of how this turned out, and I hope that you agree with me. This has ended up being my favorite part of the project so far. This is just so cool. I can't get over this. I really can't. Like, not only is it weird seeing a cover over everything now, I've been so used to just seeing individual areas in a mess. This is just so cool. This was seriously a really, really fun build, and I am really happy with how this turned out. I might say this at the end of every video, but this genuinely might be my favorite build in this project. One of my favorite builds ever. I really cannot get over how cool this is. I really struggled with the outlines, but actually getting started with the building, not only was it extremely fun, but I mean, there's just so much going on that's really interesting. Like, I didn't expect this to be so much of an enjoyable build, considering everything is like gray, bland, and the same decorations over and over. There are a few things I want to talk about, but I just want to keep looking at this. I just want to explore the whole thing. This is seriously just so cool. There are a few differences, but there's also some ones that I think are really, really cool additions, like this one right here. You might not know what this is at first, but it actually makes a lot of sense because it's the skylight that leads to the big top showroom. This doesn't actually exist in-game, and in fact, if I were to go over the general area where Big Top would escape from, it's just like some random area that doesn't really make sense. So I thought it'd be fun to add in a small addition like that where it's not in the game, but it does help make the build feel a bit more realistic. I also just really like these giant smokestacks here. They're a bit different than any other decoration, which is quite funny because most of these smaller props are actually just copy and pasted throughout the entirety of the roof. Like this one right here exists in two forms where it's about the size of the player, but then there's this one instance here where it's just gigantic for no reason. I'll see if I can go ahead and find, yeah, here it is. Where a smaller example, it's the same object, just at a completely different scale. So having these different smokestacks just, it really adds to the factory look. Like obviously a factory is going to have some of these, and I just think they're really cool. I can just imagine smoke coming out of them. I'll definitely mess around with some particle commands later because I don't think campfires are going to look really good there. But like small additions like the billboard, I haven't even brought up like the front facade yet. Like this is just so good. I was originally deciding whether I wanted to use banners for letters or if I just wanted it block built. I'm glad I decided to use banners because not only does it fit perfectly, but it's just a lot better than if it was just a mess of blocks. Like if I go back and out-render them, you can see like it's not the best. I tried to do my best possible by using staircases, but the banners are obviously going to make it look much better. And last but not least is the parking lot itself, which looks very messy, and that's because it is. I've done a lot of different parking lot designs in the past where I usually mix a couple of stone blocks together, just throw in a bit of texture and that's the end of it. But this one, there's lots of different details to it, which sounds weird, but there's different potholes, there's different marks in the road that give off different shades of color. Of course, we have the van that we actually pull up in, which is the exact same design as the one I built back in episode 1 behind this garage here, which actually connects to the interior of the building. There's another one over there from the previous team that was sent into the MCM. Obviously, we see what happens to them, but I still think it's a fun addition, adds a little bit of world building to the map itself. Also, all of these trees, as you saw, are individually built. I did copy and paste a few of them near the end because I was getting a bit tired of it and wanted to move on to the next part. But all of these are individually built trees, and I actually kind of like it. There's something really fun and relaxing about building trees where you can see how I've done it. It's not just your normal generic Minecraft tree. It has the shape of maybe a spruce tree, but it's made up of acacia, some coral blocks, and tuff. That way I could texture some grey wood blocks together, then some andesite, and then the leaves to make up the branches themselves. And I nearly forgot about this. There's a lot of messy things going on here, but it's also a really fun build. This was a pain in the ass to outline, mostly because there are so many of the same colored blocks all around the place, and it did make building it a bit messy as well. But I can still really notice all of the different decorations, like these are the slides that have the face of the elephant along them. There's of course the different fountains and garden decorations that MCM produces. We even have these climbing sets that I found really cool. There's just a lot of fun details around this place that we never see again, but it just makes the exterior stand out even more, almost as if MCM doesn't just make mascot suits and animatronics, but also a whole bunch of other things, and once again, helps for the world building. But then of course this eventually leads back to the very first thing that I built in this project, that being the entrance to the MCM facility itself. It's really nice to finally be able to combine the exterior to the interior, and once again just makes this build a lot more satisfying to explore. Oh yeah, also here's David's ball. I don't have a custom player head for it yet, so right now it's just a slab. I could go on for another 20 minutes of how proud I am of how this place turned out, so I'm just gonna go ahead and take a look at what we're going to be moving on to next, with that being the two chase sequences for Jackie and Big Top, which, believe it or not, are the final areas of MCM. They might not be directly connected to the MCM facility, but they are the last rooms before we have completed everything to do with the factory. It's really weird, and it's honestly funny at the same time that these aren't even connected to the main building, but I feel like I've gone over that long enough, and I'll have plenty to yap about in the time-lapse. So let's not waste any more time and just go ahead and get right into building the final areas of Murray's costume manor. It feels really weird saying that. It feels like I haven't been working on this project for that long, but I'm also super excited to get this done. It felt very weird building this here, specifically the Big Top chase sequence, because though you could argue the Jackie chase sequence is a basement in MCM, not only is this supposed to be next to the roof, but this is now underneath the MCM itself, next to Dolly's hospital, so this has ended up being a basement on its own, completely disconnected from the MCM. So I'm hoping this doesn't become one of those forgettable areas in a FNAF game. Like, obviously there's so much going on in MCM, there's some parts that are just not as memorable as others. Like, I'm thinking right now, maybe the behind the scenes part of the theater, the little alleyway that goes behind that. Like, you don't think of that, but I'm hoping this doesn't become one of those, because this is the Big Top chase sequence. Like, this is probably one of the most memorable parts of the game, but the environment is just in a weird spot, and I don't think it's helped in this build because it's not where it should be. Again, nothing I can do about that, but I really want to make sure I do this place justice. I didn't just do half-assed work. I actually made sure I still put the same time and effort into this, despite the fact it's not where it should be or connected to MCM. I still want to make sure you are able to go from one place to another, and in the end I might eventually add in some teleport commands so that way you are still able to explore the entire facility. Now, speaking of teleport commands, I'm definitely going to need another one for the Jackie chase sequence, as you could probably argue that this place is more connected to MCM than the Big Top chase sequence, but at the same time, I still once again needed to disconnect it from it because it just collides with everything else in the build. It's a bit less interesting than the Big Top chase sequence. It's lots of those narrow corridors with the dirt brown and concrete floors, but there are some interesting and notable parts here, like this giant vent room with the catwalk that goes around it. Just because these smaller walkways don't have as much going on doesn't mean that they can't be as interesting. It's mainly just an area to get you from point A to point B, which I guess it's unfair judging it. It's a chase sequence. Again, you're not going to pay attention to what's going on around the place. You're focused on the thing chasing after you. But there are still some nice set designs, you know? It's not bland. It's not too bland and boring. There are still stuff going on. I'm exaggerating. It makes it sound like these places are forgettable, but, you know, they're not as interesting as the main parts of MCM. Which isn't a problem, but there's always going to be that one part of the build that's going to be less fun than the other, which is kind of ironic considering I'm building this right after building the exterior, which has ended up being my favorite part of the build. And honestly, I'm curious on what your favorite part of the MCM is. I've rambled on long enough about my opinions on the game and my experience building it, but I'd be curious to hear what your favorite part of the MCM is down in the comments. And that is now everything completely finished. So let's go ahead and go over the big top chase sequence first, since it's the area that I made first. Now, obviously, like I keep mentioning, this would all be one giant tower that goes from the roof access all the way down to the first floor. Eventually, I will probably add in some teleport commands, so that way we are actually able to access all of it. But for the time being, all of this is just going to be separated. But something about this is that I'm realizing these chase sequences are really interesting to recreate because we don't spend much time here. When we're playing through the game, we're not paying attention to all of the details. We're focused on the giant enemy spider that is chasing after us. So we're not really going to be able to take in the environment. And even though it's relatively bland, you know, the wall is very simple with yellow and green, it's still really nice though. It keeps the iconic look of MCM, and it also adds some extra parts to the facility that would be a lot of fun to explore, even if there's just the same repetitive rooms over and over again. Of course, there's going to be a lot of areas that are blocked off since the game doesn't want us to go there, but eventually we are going to make it down to this crawl space here. Now, this is where I'm going to have to admit something, and this is going to come up again later on once we take a look at the Jackie chase sequence. I think I've finally realized that I just don't really enjoy building these crammed areas because there's not much you can really do, and they're just not that interesting. Like, this is probably one of the most tense parts in the game where Big Top is grabbing down, smashing through the ceiling to try and get you. But building this is not that interesting. It was the same with the CuppaTeaExe tunnels, it's the same with this, it's the same with the Jackie chase sequence. I'm not sure, but either way, it doesn't take away from the build itself. Of course, we are able to crawl on through, get to one side to the other, where now we once again enter a larger room, which once again continues all of the staff office rooms. This seems to be either in renovation or under construction, which is interesting because you would have thought that MCM would have been opened for a long time, but you still have lots of, you know, wallpaper missing, there's cloths over some walls, there's mannequins all over the place, so I can only imagine this place is used for some sort of storage. Speaking of mannequins, instead of making them out of wool by using blocks, I decided to go with armor stands for now, just so that it doesn't take up too much space and also doesn't make the build look a bit wonky. I haven't been using armor stands up until this point, but I will eventually go back through the entirety of the build, add in some proper models so that way they don't look as block built, you know. I want to keep things separate from the decorations to all of the different custom models around the place. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Jackie chase sequence, which is probably the complete opposite environmental wise compared to what we just took a look at. This is supposedly in the basement of MCM, and I say supposedly because this is actually on the same level as the rest of the MCM facility. I'll show you that later on, how the end of the chase sequence leads down to the office. This is kind of the same level as that. But either way, there are still some interesting things going on. You have all of these cages that look down to giant pits. Not sure what's up with that, but it looks cool. There's also some uniquely shaped hallways. It's not just a square, it actually has an arch going on, which is what's with all of these staircases here, so it's still a little bit interesting. I'll give it that. It's not as boring as the parachute tunnels, which were literally just the same color scheme, but with nothing going on in them. This is a little more interesting, but what I find really interesting and really fun is what is at the end here with this giant room, because once again, Secret of the Mimic has a giant empty room full of nothing. That is a term that I've marked for this game because there are so many of them where it's basically a giant room with nothing to do and there's just a bunch of filler set pieces. This is the main one in the game. There's a few of them that I've talked about earlier on in this series with other parts of the MCM, but this is the most obvious one because, like, look at this. There's nothing going on here. This room could not exist and nothing would change. It is purely just to get you from that point all the way to this point over there. It doesn't need to exist other than the chase sequence. But, I mean, it's still interesting. There's lots of vents and pipes that go all over the place that make it a lot more interesting than the narrow hallways. We of course are able to take the exact same route that we see in game, go over to the lift, make our way up, Jackie would pop out the vent, and then the chase sequence actually begins. But at the end of this long and narrow corridor, we eventually lead ourselves to the next part of the chase sequence where things get even more claustrophobic, as now we're underneath some kind of crawl space where we have to flick these levers to open up the doors. Now this, I wanted to make sure that it actually had the same feeling as that sequence, so instead of making this 2 blocks wide, I decided to go with 1.5 blocks. That way I'm forced into a crawl position, and it also makes my movement much smaller, while also capturing the moment like we see in game. At the end of it though is then this final room here. Jackie pops out of that vent, then we make ourselves to the generator and crawl inside a vent ourselves. Now, I'm not going to crawl through the whole thing because it's just vents of the same things we've seen over and over again, but then it leads to the end of the chase sequence where we would fall down into the security office. Which, if we take a look at the map, is about right here, so where exactly would this even go? You know, I've been tempted of copying the chase sequences and pasting them here and just see the mess that happens when the two builds collide, but like, I see the vision they were going for. This is the exact same vent, and it's cool and all, but it just doesn't work, like, at all. Also, you can see here, so imagine the security office is right here because we fall out of this vent, right? It's basically the same Y level as this. And keep in mind that we fall down from the manager's office on the top floor, so just... It doesn't make any sense. You should be used to it at this point. I don't even know why I'm going on about it. Well, in case you are interested, I did actually make some changes to the manager's office, so instead of just being blocked off now, it actually has a little bit of the area that we see in-game. This doesn't actually have anything going on, it's just really lots of trapdoors because on the other side of this wall is another building, so I had to cover it all up with trapdoors. There is a door at the end of this catwalk, which is interesting. It leads absolutely nowhere, as we're not able to even walk here. We jump down from the opening and then we're just stuck in the middle here. But once again, it's another instance of there being multiple doors in the MCM that don't lead somewhere, but you can just use your imagination to imagine what it might be. But like I mentioned, this now wraps up everything to do with Murray's costume manor. Now this isn't the end of the project, I want to get that doubt out of your mind. I still need to build the mansion and, like I mentioned, the full landscape around the factory, so I'm not quite done with this series just yet, but it really is amazing to see how fast I've been able to do this. It feels like yesterday I got started on this project, and it's really weird seeing me at this point already. I'm genuinely super excited to see how it's going to turn out in its completed form, and I'm even more excited to get started on all of the gameplay of it, because you know me by now, I like the command block side of things, and despite how much fun I've been having building the MCM, I think it's going to be even more fun adding in all of those different gameplay elements. So make sure that you're subscribed to the channel with all notifications turned on, so that way you don't miss out on when I do start adding some gameplay to the map, and you can also help the channel to continue to grow. But with that being said, thank you everyone so much for watching, and I will of course see you in my next video. Man, this is really cool. I'm just sitting here, I'm enjoying it. Like, I don't know what it is about the exterior that I just find so satisfying compared to everything else. It's just so nice. Look at it. It's so, this is the factory. It's MCM. It's the factory is actually here now. It's not just a bunch of rooms on the interior. The factory is actually here. Who would have thought in the series where I'm building a fictional factory that I would eventually build the factory? Who could have seen this coming?